I'm sure most of you know that this podcast comes from the Himalayas, and that's why there has been a lot of bias towards the subject. So many books I've discussed on the Himalayas, and today I've got another one. This one is called Himalaya Adventures, Meditations, Life. It is a collection of essays by the writers of the past and present, and the collection is edited by Ruskin and Namita Gokhale. So, as the subtitle goes, there are three sections in the book. First one, adventures, where there are a number of essays based on the adventures of the travelers of the past. Then the meditations, more like the spiritual lessons and meditative reflections by different writers. And then life, simply life as it is in the Himalayas. So, in today's episode, I will take you through some of these adventures, starting with the first one, the travels of Fayan. Fayan, as I'm sure you know, he was an ancient Chinese traveler and translator. He was a Buddhist monk who traveled to India and wrote about it. So, since Fayan was coming from China and through Afghanistan and Pakistan, that is by today's countries' maps, he came through the west and then entered India along the mountains. And since this was a period of Buddhism, he found a lot of monasteries along the way and he stayed in different places. And it's really interesting to observe because throughout the region of today's Afghanistan, Pakistan, and north of India, he's witnessing the Buddhism flourishing over there, which is not really the case today. And even culturally, you find a lot of interesting things. For example, when he was in Peshawar, he's talking about elephants, something that you can't imagine today there. And most of the travels that he's taking there, he's recollecting the journey of the Buddha, what he did in different places, what kind of teachings he imparted, all those things he recollects. So basically, all this travel is about Buddha's journey along this path. And as you know, there were great Buddhist learning centers in today's Pakistan, such as Takshashila. So in those parts, he was traveling through them and he was staying there and learning and teaching and, of course, writing about it. So that's the journey of Fayan. It's full of adventures, but it's also about tracing the path of Buddhism and even the journey of the Buddha. The next one is Jahangir, Mughal Emperor Jahangir's memoir, where he's describing his travel to the Kashmir Valley and he's traveling through Lahore and just writing about the travel experience. And it describes the journey from Lahore to Gujarat, which is in Pakistan, the town, now a city. And from there, he's going towards Kashmir. So let me read a really short passage from his writing. He says, "On Friday, we arrived at Khawaspur, 5 leagues from Gujarat. And after 2 further marches, we reached the banks of the Behat, where we pitched our tents. In the night, a very strong wind blew, dark clouds obscured the sky, and it rained so heavily that even the oldest persons said they had never seen such floods. The storm ended with showers of hailstones which were as large as hen's eggs, and the torrent of water combined with the wind broke the bridge. I crossed the river in a boat with the ladies of my harem, and as there were very few boats for the other men, I ordered them to wait till the bridge was repaired. This was accomplished in a week, after which the whole camp crossed the river without trouble. So, few things to notice here. First, it was raining very heavily, which is going on at the moment. Second, the bridges were collapsing, so that is not something new in today's time. But interestingly, the Mughals were getting it repaired in 1 week, whereas today we might take it longer. So that was from Jahangir, and of course, there are many adventures from different explorers of different times, and one of them is by Heinrich Harrer, who was an Austrian explorer, and his piece is called The Worst Trek of All. I'm sure the name gives it away. And in this piece, he's talking about a really difficult trek, something that was really scary and quite challenging. So let me read a few passages from this chapter. He writes, I shall never forget that night march. I've never been through an experience which placed such a strain on the body and the spirit. Our escape from the Khampas was due to the desolation of the region, the nature of which brought us new obstacles to surmount. It was a good thing that I had long ago thrown away my thermometer. Here it would certainly have marked -30 degrees, as that was the lowest it could record. But that was certainly more than reality. Sven Hedin registered -40 degrees hereabouts at this season of the year. We lobbed on for hours over the virgin snow, and as we went our minds travelled afar on their own journeys. I was tormented by visions of a warm, comfortable room, delicious hot food, and steaming hot drinks. Curiously enough, it was the evocation of a commonplace buffet at Graz, known to me in my student days, which nearly drove me crazy. At last we broke off our march, unloaded our yak, and crawled under cover. We had taken out our bag of sampa and some raw meat, as we were ravenously hungry. But as soon as we put a spoonful of dry meal into our mouths, the metal stuck to our lips and would not come away. We had to tear it loose amid curses and oaths. With appetites blunted by this painful experience, we huddled up together under our blankets and fell, despite the piercing cold, into the leaden sleep of exhaustion. So you can see the challenges, really a battle of survival going on there. So that was Harrer's adventures in the Himalayas. And as you can see, it can be really dangerous, especially those who are climbing to the top mountain summits such as K2 or Mount Everest. It can get that dangerous. Now, one of my favorite chapters is Mark Twain's journey to Darjeeling. The chapter is called The Train to Darjeeling, and written in Mark Twain's brilliant style. It's a delight to read. And the way he describes the visuals and experience, it's quite brilliant. Let me read it for you, just a couple of passages. The road is infinitely and charmingly crooked. It goes winding in and out under lofty cliffs that are smothered in vines and foliage, and around the edges of bottomless chasms. And all the way one glides by files of picturesque natives, some carrying burdens up, others going down from their work in the tea gardens. And once there was a gaudy wedding procession, all bright tinsel and color, and a bride, comely and girlish, who peeped out from the curtains of her palanquin, exposing her face with that pure delight which the young and happy take in sin for sin's own sake. By and by we were well up in the region of the clouds, and from that breezy height we looked down and afar over a wonderful picture, the plains of India, stretching to the horizon, soft and fair, level as a floor, shimmering with heat, mottled with cloud shadows, and cloven with shining rivers. Immediately below us, and receding down, down, down toward the valley, was a shaven confusion of hilltops, with ribbony roads and paths squirming and snaking cream yellow all over them, and about them, every curve and twist sharply distinct. At an elevation of 6,000 feet, we entered a thick cloud, and it shut out the world and kept it shut out. We climbed 1,000 feet higher, then began to descend, and presently got down to Darjeeling, which is 6,000 feet above the level of the plains. Brilliant description, isn't it? How beautifully he describes the whole journey. And then he reaches the town, experiences the British hospitality as well as the culture of the native Indians. And I would recommend it's another brilliant read. And another one of my favorites is called The Summit by Edmund Hillary. As you know, he was the first one to climb the top of the Mount Everest. So it's interesting to read what he was going through in his journey. And let me read a passage where he's just about to reach the top. He says, "To my right, a slender snow ridge climbed up to snowy dome about 40 feet above our heads. But all the way along the ridge, the thought had haunted me that the summit might be the crest of a cornice. It was too late to take risks now. I asked Tenzing to belay me strongly, and I started cutting a cautious line of steps up the ridge. Peering from side to side and thrusting with my ice axe, I tried to discover a possible cornice, but everything seemed solid and firm. I waved Tenzing up to me. A few more whacks of the ice axe, a few very weary steps, and we were on the summit of Everest. It was 11:30 a.m. My first sensation was one of relief. Relief that the long grind was over, that the summit had been reached before our oxygen supplies had dropped to a critical level, and relief that in the end the mountain had been kind to us in having a pleasantly rounded cone for its summit instead of a fearsome and unapproachable cornice. But mixed with the relief was a vague sense of astonishment that I should have been the lucky one to attain the ambition of so many brave and determined climbers. It seemed difficult at first to grasp that we had got there. I was too tired and too conscious of the long way down to safety really to feel any great elation. But as the fact of our success thrust itself more clearly into our mind, I felt a quiet glow of satisfaction spread through my body, a satisfaction less vociferous but more powerful than I had ever felt on a mountain top before. I turned and looked at Tenzing. Even beneath his oxygen mask and the icicles hanging from his hair, I could see his infectious grin of sheer delight. I held out my hand, and in silence we shook in good Anglo-Saxon fashion. But this was not enough for Tenzing, and impulsively he threw his arm around my shoulders and we thumped each other on the back in mutual congratulations. What a beautiful moment, right? The summit, the top of the Everest. And it was the first time that anyone had been there. Really a wonderful moment. But of course, I just read the tiny part from the last part of this journey, and there is much more that happens throughout this summit, and it's a beautiful read. You should read it. So that's it for now. That was about the adventures so far, how the travelers of the past they had experienced these great mountains. And the next part of the book, which is the meditations or reflections, which is where you will find a lot of spiritual or religious teachings. That is something that we'll discuss in the next episode. And the one after that, then we'll talk about the third section, which is about life in general, experiences in the Himalayas. So, with that, I'll take your leave. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll join me in the next episode as well, where we'll talk about the meditations part and what the great saints and sages or shamans they have experienced in the lap of the Himalayas. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you the next time. Thank you.